Arcane has gotta be one of the best things to come out from the past 5 years. I mean, who would have thought that we would get a show based on, out of all game in the world, it's League of Legends. Arcane is a spin-off of League of Legends series centered on the characters such as Vi, Jinx, Caitlyn, Chase, and Victor. To make it short, the first season of Arcane was perfect. The obvious hint is that it managed to lift the very ridiculous isekai world of LoL into a more grounded and realistic level. A fantasy adventure full of emotions, murders, and power over politics, along with the amazing art style, and in my opinion, this is one of the best animation to ever come out. So it's all left to them on lay the foundation on season 2, and when that comes out and I watch it, I was deeply. Actually, I should say that season 2 had much better ways on capturing the emotional aspect, especially since the writers knew that season 2 needs to be bigger and better than season 1. So the stakes in season 2 felt more heartbreaking, and the emotional scene definitely hits harder. And that cultivates in the finale, which is the best conclusion in the show, with every major character comes together to fight one common enemy to save humanity. Unfortunately, I was deeply disappointed at how it started. The first and second act was so sloppy, and the final battle, which was supposed to be a last stop for every single plot coming together, felt one-dimensional as opposed to previous episodes that had more thoughts and depths put into it. Arcane's biggest problem boils down to 3 parts: visual, plot and pacing, and story. The visual of Arcane Season 2, especially in earlier episodes, were constructed in a way that it feels like it really doesn't want to show what it was supposed to be. For example, in episode 1, there's a scene of the funeral of Caitlyn's mother who tragically killed in a terror attack by Jinx. This scene looks like 2 characters in a very bright lighting surrounded by a simplified 2D illustrations or outlines. Like, this feels very limiting. It doesn't tell you what the world feels like, and with the brightness equals to opening your mom's phone, it doesn't bring forth the sadness to remembering that someone had passed away. Why don't just shows like a normal scene without any filter? Like, look at this scene from Star Wars, and then look at the more mature Arcane. Tell me which scene is way better. The Star Wars obviously takes the cake because that's how you usually make a scene sad. Low-key lighting, lots of shadows. Another example in episode 4 with the opening scene of a revolution that shook an entire city, which was explained through still pictures. Like, I understood that there's a revolution, but why showing me a picture in black and white as opposed to a full animation? Like, if you go the latter route, I can at least see how bad or damaging the revolution is causing. There's more scenes like this, and their short runtimes, and the very point of that scene like barely being addressed in later episodes just feels like a waste and could have easily been removed. Moving to plot and pacing, this is the cause of why I hate Act 1 and Act 2, because it is the most un-Arcane-esque part of the entire series. After the funeral scene up until episode 7, all I see is just emotional talking and walking and oh, there's a cool fight scene. Emotional talking and walking. Oh my god, I've seen Loki. I don't want to get traumatized by the buttload amount of talking. Arcane Season 1 completely balanced the moment of where a character talks and does something. And as much as the majority of it is just talking, I'm still interested. I still want to know more about Arcane because that dynamic was locked in place with conflict. In every episode, there's always a conflict to remind the audience of the threat of the series, of the goal of each characters. When your whole 6 episodes is just characters walking around and talking without any major conflict, then how am I supposed to get interested? I mean, I just watched The Penguin, a series about the realistic and mundane life of gangsters, and I keep watching it one episode after another, because besides the amount of talking, there's always a conflict that hooked me. Some conflicts even in a simple conversation. Why can't Arcane do the same thing? And to be even more specific, the adventure was just like back in Season 1, but you just continuing the same plot without any major changes or upgrade, where Vi and Caitlyn work together to catch Jinx in the slum. Same story, same stakes. It's even worse that within that timelines of boringness, it can be easily filled with new characters that we can explore and supposedly have some sort of conflicts with the main characters so that at least, I don't get bored. Like, there's Loris and Maddie, but do I care about them when the show couldn't give a damn about their motives or origin story, resulted in a set of characters that lack to evolve and complexity? Of course I don't care. Loris was there when Vi was at her lowest point of her life, and instead of being a strong man he is and motivates her, thus opening a side of him that we haven't seen before, he did nothing, and just following her footsteps of getting drunk. Like other new characters was handled pretty well, like Les, a furry worked as an informant for Mel. She appeared in a total of 3 scenes, yet there was so much personality in her, how she could easily blend in as a spy and she's slick. Remember, this is within that short period of time. Another newbie is this kid named Isha. She's basically a minion of Jinx and we get to spend some time with her and Jinx in the first 2 acts. This horrible pacing unfortunately affects one of its main villain as well. Warwick, if you know from the game, is one of the most brutal character ever. He is what if Orwell's 1984 was condensed into a werewolf. Warwick is known for its uniquely distinct characteristic of while being a brute, he could also tracking down a blood drop from miles away. And if he does, he will automatically trigger a stimulant that basically makes him on steroid, causing him to be a formidable foe that could break apart a horde in just a scratch. In Arcane, Warwick was supposed to represent a terrifying monster of the wasteland that nobody cares. But instead what we see is a crying dad. Look how sad he is, he just wants to be loved like Namor. Sure, he killed a bunch of people, but could you spare him?
What the hell?
Honestly, I have no problem with Warwick being exposed as Vander because I can reckon that a major villain whose sole purpose is to search and destroy without any personality would feel flat. But when the majority of his appearance is just trying to get sympathy points that I don't give a single dime because I already lose track of the story, then you clearly wrote a character in a really wrong way. All of those shitty plots finally coming down together in the finale of Act 2, which is episode 6, where honestly I don't even know how to describe this scene. It is just fucking horrendous, like even the soundtrack itself is as confused as I was. And it all concluded with Victor saying that, so yes, basically humans are messy, war never changes. Anyway, I got to finish my 40s farak and hallucinates about a space spider giving me therapy session. By the way, that was a reference to Spaceman because that movie took place in Czech Republic and coincidentally Victor is also speaking in Czech accent. Unfortunately, the problem in the first 2 acts of season 2 completely ruined the 3rd act in a way that no one even noticed. You see, Arcane had a central plot that focuses on 2 characters, Vi and Jinx. The 2 siblings were brought into a lower-class family in the city of Zon where their parents was brutally murdered by Piltover occupational forces. Fortunately, both of them were saved by 2 men, Vander and Silco. Growing up, Vi and Jinx ends up becoming opposition to each other. Vi wants to have peace with Piltover people while Jinx wants to destroy them. This whole arc happened because of Arcane's central theme, which is apartheid, the implementation and maintenance of a system of legalized racial segregation in which one racial group is deprived of political and civil rights. While racism did not exist in Arcane, the world itself definitely fits more in the definition. In Arcane lies 2 cities residing side by side with contradictory positions. Piltover is a city filled with higher class where its citizen lives a healthy, comfortable life and away from any violence. And then there's Zon, the absolute shithole for the lower class, a wasteland, lawless, and every district in the city is run by absolute psychopaths. And it gets even more depressing. You see, Piltover have actual legal jurisdiction over Zon, meaning they could send forces and pillaging Zon whenever they like and they could get away with it in course. And this is what happened to Vi and Jinx's parents. So this became the backbone for the conflict because every major villain in Arcane was born in Zon in terrible condition. Arcane perfectly depicts that villain isn't born, but made. Remember Silco? He is the main villain in Season 1, a psychopath who will do anything necessary to bring Piltover onto its knees, and he is the sole reason why Jinx is just overall evil and violence, because he raised her. There's also another plot following the people of Piltover through a young man named Jace, who upon the discovery of the new technology called Arcane, inspired to help humanity in the form of technological advancement. In his journey, he met another student named Victor, a disabled man who wants to help Jace developing his technology so that it could cure his disease. But as time went on, such technology was taken advantage by corrupt politicians of Piltover for their own political gains.
I love democracy.
To make matters worse, Jace's own teacher, Heimerdinger, also warned him that the use of Arcane could cause the destruction of an entire nation. This creates a very dynamic story. Now, here's the problem. While Season 1 is perfect in telling their story, it failed to mix the two plots together, which is the dynamic of Fi and Jinx and Arcane, and I was really hoping that they get to do that in Season 2, but of course the video is already long enough to have yes as an answer. Because Act 1 and 2 of Season 2 wasted a lot of time with Fi and Caitlyn walking around without any development on Fi, Jinx and Arcane, and that the plot of the Arcane itself was never developed until like episode 6, which is stupid to think because Arcane in Season 1 was seen as a technology so destructive, yet in Season 2 it was never being seen as a threat, and when it does become a threat in the final fight, it just felt cheap, like the good guys literally fought evil people that lack any personality. And again, only become a threat at a very minimum time when it's necessary. This also caused the third act to begin with some of the most cartoonish turning point ever. All of a sudden, the arc of very grey morale world where Piltover and Zaun hate each other because Piltover keeps oppressing the Zaun and Zaun keeps attacking Piltover, it suddenly concluded in a Piltover's politicians telling the lower class people to work together to fight one common enemy. Yeah, this just screams plot convenience. The final fight where every single character that hated each other previously starts working together to fight the final villain, and that is Victor because he uses the Arcane to heal himself, which of course ended horribly, and that is the sole reason why I like Act 3 a lot, because while the real threat has been revealed to be from the friends and allies that we get along with, it also captured the element that we haven't seen before, the fact that these characters hated each other previously, and even in such dire situations, they still managed to unite. But you would not think that a series like Arcane would have an occupational force that keeps oppressing the one group of people to lecture them about working together and them just immediately say yes. Like that just doesn't make any sense. The first two acts of Season 2 was focused on the Piltover's assaults on Zaun because of the attack by Jinx. That is logical, that is good, that is a necessary conflict, but it got bastardized by like fucking endgame final fight. Like come on. There needs to be some sort of effort that spans so long to convince them, like maybe the lower class people giving a speech that they will not help Piltover because of the stuff they've done in Zaun and walk away, and then later on they realize their mistakes at the end of the episode and then starts helping Piltover against the invader on the next. In order to reach equality, you need to destroy the system created against it. Something like that could make me not feel disgust because that original result was a very reason Arcane was misinterpreted. Arcane told a grey world where two different people clashes through unfair wars they did not even consent to and do not want, where the lower class people had to commit atrocities for the betterment of themselves and face heavy consequences for it, while the higher class with their arrogant attitudes bullies everyone who gets in their way and completely ignorant to a dangerous technology that they use like Arcane and never pay the price because they are the one who made the law. This is why the series is called Arcane. A fixation of one destructive yet beautiful thing, which is Arcane, while ignoring the real oppression that is the Zaun people. Moreover, Arcane Season 2 focused too much on being experimental, one where the cinematography jumbles with elements that doesn't match the story, one that prioritizes less conflict over dialogue, one that focuses on the emotional end result of the story rather than the story to take times. Almost every single character who's supposed to change for the better because of their completed arc in Season 1 ends up showing their supposed soft side as if they've been going through a long, exhausting fight for the entirety of their appearance. Jinx, who's supposed to be the successor for Silco with her thirst for committing atrocities on Piltover, ends up being seen as an emotional lost puppy that did almost nothing, and the same thing applies with other villains like the Brute Warwick and the deceptive Dr. Sinch. Arcane was supposed to be the pinnacle of telling an unforgiving world where almost every single faction is entitled and oppress lower class people for their political gains, and there's a brutal challenge for the main character to reach the goal of ending the conflicts. But when half of their story starts to become drastically easier to the point that it gets very comical and cartoonish, when the other half is the exact opposite, then we clearly have a problem. Anyway, if you managed to stay all the way here, then I really appreciate it. I'm planning on making videos focusing more on the media side instead of storytelling because that's the type of content I enjoy the most. Right, subscribe if you want to support the channel, and I'll see you later. Peace. Also, don't talk to me about that sex scene. That is disgusting.